Hi, Chad here. This is a video all about why I no longer believe in managed money and why I believe you shouldn't either. I'm going to share some studies and some statistics, and hopefully this is a bit of a wake-up call for you. So let's get started. All right, even Warren Buffett says that investing in ETFs or the market index is the way to go, and he's widely considered the best investor of all time. So if it's good enough for him, why wouldn't it be good enough for us here in Canada? And when I was doing my research for this video, I came across this report here on my screen. All right, this is the report that I found. And now I found it on TD's website. However, it was done by the Canadian Institutional Investment Bureau or something like that. It's labeled in the report, and the report will be linked below so you can take a look at it. And the first thing I want to highlight, which I think is absolutely hilarious, is this is a report about money managers in Canada and who has the most investment assets and all these different things. And the cover image that they chose was poker chips. If that doesn't tell you right away how our industry can look at managing money, I don't really know what will. And if I go down, this is where I'm going to highlight some things. So we have Canadian assets under management by different asset classes, and all of this is in millions. So pensions are the largest. That's not a huge surprise to me. Pensions are very large, and they're also, most people, it's kind of like this mystery number, right? If you know you're getting $4,000 a month, that may be the number that you know, whereas from the pension side, they may have $800,000 to $1 million invested for you, something like that. It's often like a bit of a mystery. Mutual funds is the second category, and that's what we're talking about here. And so there's 1,118,000, but then times a million. So this is $1.1 trillion. All right, just to repeat that, that means on aggregate between you, me, our friends and family, in mutual funds alone, we have an invested $1.1 trillion. And when I look at the mutual fund industry in Canada, I know the average management expense ratio, or MER, is probably around 2.4%. I want to be generous in this video, so I use 2.2% as my metric. So 1.1 trillion times 2.2% means that on aggregate, we are paying $24.6 billion to mutual fund companies to manage that money. I don't know how many teams manage mutual funds across Canada, but I can't imagine it's more than 100 or less than 50. I'm guessing it's kind of in that range. And we're paying those teams $24.6 billion. They better be bringing us a lot of returns for that, right? So this is where I'm going to introduce another study, and this one is one of my absolute favorites. We've all heard of the S&P 500, Standard & Poor's. They have a research division that puts out a report card every year, and it's called the SPIVA Report Card Canada. And here is the 2022 SPIVA Report Card. All right, so this is one of my absolute favorite reports, and I actually break this one out with clients all the time. So S&P, division of S&P Global here. SPIVA is the S&P indices versus active management. That's what SPIVA stands for. And this report has a plethora of different graphs and charts and things like that. And once again, I'll link it in the video so you can go take a look. But I'm going to highlight one graph in particular, and we're going to go through it here. And it's on, if I remember correctly, page 7. Here it is, report 1A. Read this title with me. Percentage of funds underperforming their benchmark based on absolute return. So this is underperforming. So a big number is a problem here. And we have different fund categories. We have Canadian equity, Canadian focused equity, which the definitions are in here of what the difference is for those. Canadian dividend, Canadian small to mid cap, US equity, international equity, and global equity. Then we have what the actual index is that you can go and take a look at as well. And then we have 1, 3, 5, and 10-year return data. And this is, again, this is the 2022 report card. And for me, when I'm talking about financial planning, I'm not talking about 1-year returns, right? Anyone can beat the market once in a while. Even a broken clock is right twice a day, right? That's not what I'm talking about when I'm talking about financial planning or investment returns. I'm talking long term. So I'm going to have all this info here. I'm not going to gatekeep any of the info or cherry pick anything like that. I'm just going to highlight the 10-year column. So Canadian equity, so managed money by Canadians that is focused on Canada over a 10-year span ending December 30th of 2022 has an 84.9% likelihood of underperforming their benchmark. It's a 15.1% chance of being beneficial. And if you go down here, the US equity one is dire. Like, do not buy a US equity mutual fund that is managed by a Canadian company. It has a 1.8% likelihood of doing better than just buying the S&P 500. This is shocking to me. And when I first read this report, it changed the trajectory of my career, because I had a really hard time bringing this type of statistic and charging people for it. All right, so again, just to hit that home one more time, we have an aggregate 1.1 trillion invested in mutual funds. We pay around $24.6 billion in fees to these teams to manage that money. And between the different levels of the SPIVA report card, they have somewhere between a 15 and 5% likelihood of actually being beneficial for that fee. This should bother you. This bothers me so much. Why is this the way our system is? Our system is broken, it's biased, and it's sales oriented. When you walk into an institution that has a big branded logo and they have their own portfolio management team, they are going to provide you advice that is biased. They are going to provide you advice in an atmosphere where sales are driven. There are quotas. There are certain expectations of the salespeople to drive money coming into that company because they need to continue funding this beast that is, statistically speaking, doing next to nothing for you. Now, I want to be clear about something too. Underperforming an index does not mean negative returns. It simply means, in relation to being a couch potato and investing in an index, it's underperforming that. So you may be in mutual funds that have had positive returns and even great returns, but when compared to its index, is it optimized for you? And for that, let's just think of this as a silly analogy, right? I am an overweight guy. I'm going to a gym. I'm paying that gym about $150 a month to go there 3-4 times a week for about an hour and a half. If my alternative was sitting on my couch and watching movies, and that had an 85% likelihood of losing me more weight, why would I pay the gym $150 a month? That makes no sense, and it's completely illogical. What we are paying on aggregate to these companies is completely illogical, and it makes no sense. So, what are the alternatives out there? In today's day and age, DIY investing is way more accessible than it has been, even compared to 2-3 years ago. But compared to 20 years ago, it is light years of change. You can go to a Wealthsimple or a Questrade and do DIY investing very easily. And at K4, we have what we're calling our hybrid approach. We do fee-for-service planning, and then if clients come on board long-term, we are doing ETF investing, but we're doing a planning fee on the side. And that's one way that we are doing our best to remove bias from our conversations. When a client brings investments to K4, I earn zero on that. I only earn money on the planning side. So you bring $10,000 or $10 million, it makes no difference to me in terms of my bottom line. And so as far as human nature goes, my bottom line is a major motivating factor. So it's one way that we're doing our best to remove bias by providing our, what we call, hybrid system. So we start with a fee-for-service financial plan. It's a relatively low cost. We believe it's a really fair value. And then we have really low fees after the fact ongoing, because we don't want to be a weight around our clients' necks when it comes to their investment returns. For you as an investor, for your retirement plan, your nest egg, your everything in retirement, a beneficial conversation around investing with you should be revolving around asset allocation, not around specific stock names or things like that. If you are properly diversified in reasonable or low fee ETFs like the ones we offer at K4 or the ones you can do DIY, you should have positive returns through your retirement. You need to make sure you're well diversified and that they're quality ETFs. So that's the type of thing we would look at. But our conversations here are way more about asset allocation. Are you taking enough risk? Are you taking too much risk? Things like that. We would never specify a name here or there because, as I've showed with these different reports, that simply does not work. It may have decades ago when the market was a little bit different, but these days it does not work. All right, if this video was a wake-up call for you, it may be time for you to reach out to K4 and explore our hybrid model. We've done our best to remove as many biases as we can from it to make sure you're getting the best advice possible. And we know we've done a great job setting our system up to make sure that we can save you money. 1% on fees or even 0.5% on fees may not sound like a lot by itself, but once you add 10, 20, 30 years, that's a lot of travel. That's a lot of hobbies. That's a lot of spoiling your grandkids that we can add back into your pockets. And that is one of our missions at K4. So reach out today. And until next time, keep planning.